Hey everybody, welcome to the Fallout Cascadia Music Producers Roundtable. Here we're discussing the music and audio related elements of the Fallout Cascadia project, our current thoughts on it, and what we're currently working on. Say hi everyone.
Hi.
Hey,
I'm Alex. I'm the founder of the Fallout Cascadia project, and over
woo!
about the past year or so, I've been mainly focusing on music. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm the surpriser, Kalle. I'm the music lead for Fallout Cascadia. I dabble in some sound effects as well, but you know, music's my thing.
Cool. And I'm Sergey. I joined the project a few months ago, currently creating music alongside very talented composers like Kalle and Alex, and also Braden Hull, who couldn't be with us here at this moment, but he created the orchestral theme for the trailer, and I think it was really good. And now I'm just overall really happy that we're here to discuss and share a few things with people who are interested in Cascadia.
Yeah. So let's get started.
Yeah, we have a group of questions lined up. Who would like to ask the questions, by the way?
Okay, let me start by asking, what do we want to achieve with our music for Cascadia? Alex.
Okay, so in terms of what do I want, or what do we want to achieve with Cascadia's music, I think we've all been drawing from a lot of different sources for inspiration, and that's one advantage that you can definitely get having a larger team of composers as opposed to just one or two people. So we're all able to draw from a lot of different sources, which has allowed us to go in a lot of different directions for Cascadia's music, which has been really enlightening and allowed us to really critique each other's work a whole lot more. So I know that for me in particular, I've been going into more music theory and trying to develop more knowledge along that line so that I can enhance not just the texture of the music, but the actual melodic content of it as well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. So, what tracks have you been working on lately?
I've actually been working on a lot of currently untitled pieces. I don't really know where we would like to put them in the actual music, but I think they all kind of fit the general tone of Fallout quite well. Um, I've been trying to experiment a lot with combat music, which has actually proven to be kind of difficult because of
Oh
the
yeah.
way that Fallout's combat works. Because it's actually very slow paced. Like, I've been trying to draw a lot of inspiration from, like, the Doom soundtrack, which is a game that I really enjoy. But you can't do that for Fallout because the combat is, like, 2 or 3 times slower than what you would think it would be if you were having Doom music playing along. So you really need to think about it and judge it and work with it in a way that actually feels natural for the pace of Fallout, which has been proving really difficult.
Yeah,
Because,
we've
like,
split the tasks up in three parts. So one for more easy, like rad roaches enemies, and one for normal battle, and then one for like the real intense battles, Death Claw, you name it.
Yeah, well, in the past few months, at least what I've seen is we've been focusing more on ambient music. So we're gonna have three, basically three categories of music: battle music, ambient music that you might hear while exploring Seattle, and also some unique compositions that you might hear um, while doing something important in the story, like some scripted events or something of that sort. When it comes to battle or combat music, it's definitely challenging because Einan Zer's music is really well made, and
Yeah.
it's really percussive, and
I mean, that's definitely the challenge right there is you want to kind of follow Einonzer's style, but at the same time, we do want to differentiate ourselves from just straight up a copy,
copying. Yeah.
right?
I think we've developed our own taste and style for how the Cascadia soundtrack will sound like already, just by learning, riffing off each other, feedback, our own styles combining, both like on purpose and sort of like by naturally creating our own style. I mean, mimicking New Vegas soundtrack sounds good, but do we really want a New Vegas soundtrack for Cascadia? There's a lot of improv required, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess the atmosphere and the general perception of Vegas is different from Seattle, and we must reflect what's what's unique about Seattle in the music that we make. I guess I'm no expert of geography, but Seattle has a lot of wooded areas and forests, while Nevada has a lot of deserts, and so the music obviously should reflect that.
Not only like different climates, but compared to, let's say the wastes of Boston, Seattle, or our Seattle, is, there's hope.
Mm-hmm.
Some grass is still green, or has become green once again. A lot of leaves, bushes. It's not just brown, dead trees. It's a more uplifting tone, even though it's a post-apocalyptic setting.
Yeah, I like how the whole team is very keen on bringing something new to the table. Even when it comes to 3D models or level design, we just want to give Seattle its unique feel, because it's a place that hasn't really been explored before in Fallout. I have a really tough question. I've seen a lot of comments in our Discord that somehow maybe we should reflect the grunge movement that originated around Seattle. Do you guys know anything about it? What are we doing on?
Well, I know specifically in the early days of the project, I was definitely doing some research into, so big thing about Fallout is like, I'm not sure the exact technological thing, but I'm pretty sure like they don't have transistors. It's all like vacuum tubes, and that's how their computers are supposed to work. And that's like a major diverging point. So like that creates problems for like how to distort a guitar sound. They don't really. So you kind of have to experiment with like different musical styles in order to get how Fallout's music would take on the grunge music movement, or would it just stay culturally stagnant? Like it's even more of a lore issue than it necessarily is a music issue.
I feel like Fallout has often sort of thrown in some 90s-esque things, just like out of nowhere. In Fallout 1, everything from weapons to, I think, almost computers as well, sort of like PC-esque things. I don't know if the 9mm submachine gun. I mean, that's sort of a 90s weapon. You can find in, I think, Fallout 1 and 2. That sort of mix between 60s and 90s. I don't feel like the rules are set in stone as hard as... I mean, that's why it's not a mad thing to suggest that style of music as they did in the Discord.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's kind of hard to make like a decision like, do we really want to go down that route? How would we want to do it? Because you still want to, if we make that sort of music and we try to put it in the game's radio, you still want it to sound Fallout-y. So one, creating like a 4-piece rock outfit just for this is kind of difficult. Like we have a few members on the team who do that sort of stuff, but we can only do so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, the influence is if I'm able. I'm not sure if I am. The influence, sure, but I would never able to really fuse it together with either the soundtrack or I can't really see it on the radio. I think we've so far into the development, even though you've researched it way back, the suggestion might be a little bit too late, I guess.
Yeah, well, maybe not on the radio, but I'm sure I've heard some like bass guitars in Einar Zur's soundtrack, and I've also heard synthesizers, which was kind of odd. In the trailer for Far Harbor DLC, so I think one of the ways that we can show this grunge culture is with some slightly distorted bass sounds.
I mean, I used a bass in the latest track I shared with everyone.
Yeah, well, I know that Kurt Cobain died in Seattle. Maybe that could be somehow reflected in.
Ooh, the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Easter eggs in the soundtrack.
Go talk to the writing team.
Yeah, okay. Maybe with some corpse laying around with his hat shot off. I don't know.
But yeah, we're definitely cognizant of the musical history of Seattle. It's not something we're ignoring.
Yeah.
It's just hard to find ways to integrate it.
Yeah. What I want to point out is that, there's the questions and answers sub chat in our Discord, and we're attentively listening to what potential fans of the game that might potentially come out are saying. We're listening and we want to implement something that the fans want. So it's basically by the fans for the fans. It sounds really,
I've heard that before.
I'm making a really big deal out of it, but it's basically what we want to do.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess we kind of talked about it a bit. So what inspires, Callie, what inspires you musically, and especially, the music that you do for Cascadia, where you draw your influences from?
I touched on this before we started recording. I feel like I've taken a lot of inspiration from, let's say, Jesper Kyd, who made the soundtrack for Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and 3, I think. Even though I might feel like I have taken a source of inspiration from him, it doesn't often translate very obviously in my compositions. It's often a lot of improv. You start off with an idea of, oh, I've heard this, one of my favorite tracks from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and then obviously trying to take a spin on it. It's I don't think I have too many strong influences. I wouldn't be able to name too much off the palm of my hand, or however you say it.
Yeah, well, I guess Jesper Kyd, he's a really good example to follow when it comes to music for games.
I've often been told that a lot of my soundtracks are reminiscent of this is harsh to admit, but I don't remember the composer for Fallout 1 and 2.
I actually don't know his name either.
And I obviously take that as a compliment. And
let me look it up.
I've definitely the Fallout 1 and 2 soundtracks are definitely favorites of mine. So yeah, right. Embarrassing, but yeah.
Mark Morgan.
Yeah, well, it's kind of intriguing that Bethesda chose a different guy to compose the soundtrack. I'm not sure if he has done a lot of, that Morgan guy, if he has done a lot of soundtracks.
He made for the I think The Bachelor is one of his most famous works. The soundtrack for some season or the generally used Bachelor soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I often I feel like I've bounced back and forth between making R&B music and soundtrack music, and I can often learn a lot. Beyond just about learning, I can take inspiration from sort of the different genres. So often, my soundtracks that I make for Fallout Cascadia, more than not, often end up more melodic than percussion focused, I feel, for both good and evil.
And that's definitely exemplary of the entire team. Like, I have a very diverse background in like electronic music. That's my wheelhouse. So I bring a lot of like kind of monophonic, very kind of texture focused. Like, it's a big focus on production. And I think that having that melting pot of a bunch of different composers with a lot of different background has really allowed us to definitely draw inspiration from a lot of different places.
I think that's gonna show once the soundtrack drops and the game drops, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be a challenge to try to make it seem as though the whole soundtrack is seamless, as though it was made by one person, to merge all the styles of the different composers that are involved in this project. But just in terms of the environment that was created at Cascadia, it's very demanding, but at the same time it's very supportive.
Yeah.
And we're all working together, and we see what other people do, and it motivates us to achieve new heights in what we do. And getting feedback from other people, it's from other talented composers, it definitely improved what I do.
Yeah, same here.
That's for sure.
I'm very much in need of feedback from all the, it's not just the music guys who come with suggestions and tips and whipping. It's sometimes it's asset creators who have some good points. I feel like I've improved a lot this, I think, past half year. I don't know how long I've been here, but a lot of improvement. And I think that sort of, feedback back and forth really helps with creating a similar style, because you don't want to be a hypocrite, obviously. I know quality is a big priority in all departments for the project, so I think the quality level, trying to, I don't want to say one up each other, but trying to keep on the same level is going to make it feel more seamless when listening to the whole thing, or going through interior to exterior, hearing ambient music play in the background.
So the next question is, what do we like and not like about the Fallout music, especially Fallout 4, and specifically the music for both games and films in general? What do we think we could improve on as a team? Sergey, do you want to answer this?
I've noticed I guess everyone noticed it, but there's a sort of a dichotomy with Fallout soundtracks. It's because it has this old American 30s and 40s and 50s culture in it, and it has a lot of old songs by the Ink Spots, for example, that I just adore. But at the same time, it has this new ambient music that is reflective of the 90s era, when Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 were created, obviously, and I'm just not sure how to go about it. It's I guess BioShock is a game that's set in a similar, I guess, culture in the old American 30s 40s era, and as far as I'm concerned, it's reflective of that era, and music of Fallout is not. And I think it's, in a way, it's really exciting that it tries to combine those two cultures and two styles. But what do you guys think?
I mean, I've always looked at the like the poppy soundtrack of Fallout and the original soundtrack of Fallout. I've always looked at those as two separate entities, and that may be a blind spot on my part, because I've always conceptualized it as diegetic and non-diegetic, and the pop music is more for building lore than it is for building atmosphere or mood. However, I definitely think that it would be interesting to experiment with combining the two of them. It could lead to a very interesting style of original soundtrack.
Yeah, that definitely would be an interesting challenge to take on, even though I'm not sure if we'll be doing it in Fallout Cascadia. I think we're going for a more traditional Fallout soundtrack in a more, Ein und Zers style. What I think about Fallout 4's music and music for games and films in general is that it's super well made and it sounds good, but it's not really memorable. And I'm sorry for saying it, if you're listening to Fallout 4 soundtrack every day, then you must remember a few things here and there. But for the most part, it lacks significant themes. Unlike Star Wars, for example. I know it's not a fair comparison because Star Wars is a movie, but Star Wars had a bunch of really, really memorable themes that would enhance the narrative and the story, and you could hum them and sing them and remember them for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's definitely a time period thing. Star Wars was made in the 70s, and ever since then, there has been this slow trend in the majority of movie scoring, or scoring in general, to make the music less noticeable and less something that you can hum or sing along to, because I don't know why this has happened, but I know that Mick Gordon, who composed the Doom soundtrack, also pointed this out and complained about it. Music should be allowed to be front and center.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm glad we agree on that. And maybe as composers for Cascadia, we should take notice of that and try to make the Fallout Cascadia soundtrack more memorable. And maybe have more themes that you could sing and hum and remember and associate with different factions. One faction that I'm thinking of is NCR. And NCR definitely had a theme in Fallout New Vegas. And it was percussion driven, and it was mostly battle music, battle background music. But maybe what we'll try to do is have a more instrumental and more melodic theme for NCR, still militaristic so that it would fit the NCR style, but maybe slightly more memorable in terms of melody. And I've been drawing a lot of inspiration from Star Wars lately, and I guess we can sort of implement a few aspects of the philosophy behind Star Wars music into Cascadia so that the soundtrack for Cascadia would be more memorable.
Yeah. And when it comes to movies, I totally agree how music nowadays tends to be more of a background thing, not very memorable, not supposed to be very memorable. You're supposed to remember the dialogue, the characters, feelings that those things portray. But if you look at like movies like Dunkirk, where there's not a lot of dialogue and there's not too much action, obviously there's your fair amount of action and memorable dialogue, but the music is what really makes, at least me when I watched it, makes you feel. You feel for the characters, you feel for the harsh situation they're in. I mean, it's a very appraised soundtrack.
Definitely
Totally deserves it.
I mean, just to look at the counterpoint to that, many people have pointed out that the Marvel movies, you can't hum a single theme from any of them. The only exception is they have finally recently begun to reuse the Avengers theme. It took them 10 years to come up with one theme that people remember. That's terrible.
Here you go. None. Hum the Spider-Man soundtrack.
I've never actually seen it.
No.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the next question?
Yeah, we'll get to the next question in a second. But what I also wanted to point out is that those themes, they're supposed to enhance and enrich and emphasize the images of certain events or characters. Like Indiana Jones, for example, he has his own theme, and it really goes well, hand in hand with his character. And you can't really imagine Darth Vader without his Imperial March theme, and it just adds depth and adds a new layer to his character. So I guess there's
to
that.
add to that, actually, just before we move on, the YouTube channel Sideways actually has a really excellent analysis of how John Williams scored Star Wars. And one of the excellent things he did is he didn't directly score characters. He actually managed to score different concepts, so like the Force or the Imperials, and then apply that to the characters. And that was definitely a really clever thing on his part.
Yeah. Fallout 4 obviously has its unique, rememberable melody. So we had that going for us.
Yeah, I guess that's good. So, do you guys know what songs are we gonna use? For the radio. In Fallout Cascadia.
No, I'm not too caught up with that. Funny enough.
Yeah, that's definitely more of a rights issue almost. It's not even, I doubt we're going to be composing any or, hardly any music.
Oh, man.
That would be a fun thing to try and do, but it would definitely be very difficult to compose 50 pieces of music that all sound different, like they're by 50 different bands. We can't do it. So it's really more of a rights issue of finding music that we can use.
I tried to make a very 60s song by myself for a smaller project. It's an actual nightmare. I saw a list for the music that we're going to include in our radio stations.
Yeah.
But I haven't looked at it, so I'm not one to answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure how American laws work when it comes to rights to songs. So I'm not even sure from which time period are we going to use.
I actually do know a bit more about this. American copyright law is atrocious, and I despise it, because it's the life of the author plus 75 years is how long most copyright, it varies per the type of medium that it is, but that's how long most copyright lasts, which is terrible. And they keep extending it, by the way, because Disney doesn't want to lose the rights to Mickey Mouse. They have been the biggest push behind every copyright extension in about the last 40 years. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Are we trying to... Yeah.
Well, I wish all those great artists that everyone loves, I wish they died soon so we can use
Exactly.
The songs.
On the upside, we have a lot of time to develop the mod. This being... so,
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah, I guess those laws are kind of similar everywhere. Like it's 70 years. It's plus 70 years
Yeah.
where I'm from.
But we'll
Um,
manage. Definitely manage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we've already accomplished the goals set for the radio stations, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. Even though we might aspire a bit up to the, from the 30s up to the 70s. I'm not exactly sure how harsh we are on those timelines, but I think we're going to be able to, create a non-extremely repetitive radio station. Definitely.
Fallout 4 had a classical station, which
Yeah.
I really enjoyed actually, because Fallout 4 didn't have a lot of new songs. It mostly used, I guess, songs from Fallout 3 for whatever reason. And I've grown very accustomed to them. And at some point I just switched to the classical radio and really enjoyed it. There's a lot of, really awesome classical compositions there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we're going to have classical radio station in Cascadia. I think we're going to have at least a few radio stations, maybe 3. But what do you guys know about it? And what can what can we share with people who are listening?
What I can say is that I do know, like, Fallout New Vegas is actually the perfect example of how difficult this can be, because they had a serious problem acquiring the rights to all the songs that they wanted, and that's why people ended up complaining about the lack of variety in the radio music in New Vegas. It's because they had a long list of songs that they wanted to get in the game, but they just couldn't afford them, or it was too difficult to get the rights in time.
Yeah, you definitely see that.
Yeah, well, we definitely don't have
The big iron on our hip.
Yeah. Well, Fallout 4 had a couple of original songs in there as well. I think they were performed by this lady who played Magnolia, and I think she also played Wonder Woman.
You mean Linda Carter?
Yeah. And what I'm thinking is maybe we could somehow manage to bring a couple of original songs into Fallout Cascadia.
I think I've already seen some snippets of what you're talking about, which may or may not be included in the mod. It's not impossible. We have a lot of talented people who, I think the one I'm thinking of is not even in the music department. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, that's going to do it for us here at the Fallout Cascadia Music Roundtable. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to leave you with some music composed by one of the 3 of us, or maybe all 3. Again, thank you for listening, and see y'all later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Perfection itself.